Hi everyone, this is Sarah at The Catholic Homemaker. Today I'm going to be doing another homeschooling book review, and this one is called Designing Your Own Classical Curriculum, A Guide to Catholic Home Education by Laura Berquist. And last week I did a video on the well-trained mind, and so this book is similar in a number of ways, but I think both of them are really excellent reference homeschool curriculum books. Both of them are curriculums for your children, and I'm just so grateful for these resources because I'm so new to homeschooling and I'm just trying to take in all this information. So if you're anything like me, it's really great to have these resources out there, and there are so many more out there that I'm learning. So it just can be overwhelming, especially when you're new to it, like I was last year. And just reading these two books has really made me think that it's not as overwhelming as I originally thought it was, that there are already pre-developed curriculums out there, and so I don't need to just completely design my own. And I think that was the most overwhelming thing for me. So let's jump into it. First of all, I want to talk about the author quotes Dorothy Sayers, and she wrote this article titled The Lost Tools of Learning. Miss Sayers says that the goal of education should be to teach children how to think. We want them to learn the art of learning. Then they will be equipped for life. Whether or not they learn all the subjects possible in school, they will be able to learn any subject when it becomes necessary or desirable, if they know how to learn. She says that learning subjects in school is of secondary importance. What matters is the method of learning. And then she directs our attention to the trivium and the quadrivium of a classical education. And so a classical education is also known as a liberal arts education, and it is really not taught in schools anymore. This includes what's called the trivium, and I talked about this in my Well-Trained Mind video, but I will go over it in case you didn't watch that video. A trivium is part of a classical education, and it is broken down into 3 stages: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. In the grammar stage, that's up to grade 4, and you can start this at a really early age with your child, I guess even from birth. And essentially, you are just filling your child's head with all kinds of facts, because at this age, your child is really open to memorization, and that's what's really important in this stage. It's also called the parrot stage. The second stage is from about grades 5 to 8, and that's the logic stage. And that's when they start asking questions like, well, why did this happen? Why did the Civil War happen? And then in the final stage, the rhetoric stage, they're learning how to build an argument. It builds on the first 2 stages, grammar and logic, and they're learning to write and speak with force and originality. And then this author also talks about the quadrivium, and that includes the subjects of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And those 7 things are what is compiled of a classical education. And that is largely missing in public and private schools to this day. Many years ago, decades ago, it was taught in schools, but I don't believe it is anymore. And I think it's more found when you are homeschooling or unschooling. Well, I guess not so much unschooling your children. That's a whole different subject matter. But in a classical homeschooling curriculum, it seems that a lot of people value the trivium stages of education. So this book, as I said, is very similar to the Well-Trained Mind, but it has a different curriculum. And so it is broken down into each grade level up through the 12th grade. And it has recommendations for each subject matter. It breaks it down in each grade level. And at least through the first grade, kindergarten and first grade, she has a recommended amount of time needed to spend with the child learning each day. But then past second grade, she actually says that it can vary from child to child. So she basically doesn't recommend an allotted amount of time because it's based on the individual needs of the child. And she said, try for a mean between too much and too little time for your child. That is very general advice, but it is very valid. And then she has resources listed, suppliers listed at the end, where to find these books. And I'm going to give you a sample of what's recommended for kindergarten. So a sample schedule for kindergarten: on Monday, she recommends poetry, reading, religion, and drawing. And then on Tuesday, poetry, reading, religion, and math. And then it alternates like that every other day for Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday is a free day, whatever you choose to do. And then the evening, she recommends that you work on literature and music. And so literature could include just simply reading to your child, teaching your child how to read, anything like that. And then music, what she actually recommends for music is hymn singing, 36 traditional Roman Catholic hymns. And even earlier in the book, she says this is the curriculum that has worked for her, but she says feel free to tweak it and learn from other people who have made other curriculums. And she recommends a number of other curriculums to read just so you can learn. And one of them is the Seton homeschool curriculum. There's a number of others too, but I just, I find that to be good advice because, as she says, it's good to learn from other people from what has worked. And this is what has worked for her and her family. But music, you could also add piano lessons for your children or other music lessons for just general music or learning another instrument. Or you could learn about music history and hear classical music, hear different genres of music. It's kind of nice that you can tweak it based on your child's interests or your interests and your needs. For art, she recommends Mommy, It's a Renoir. And poetry, A Child's Garden of Verses is one of the books recommended by Robert Louis Stevenson. And basically with poetry, you're working on it about 5 minutes a day, so it's not very much. And really the total time recommended for kindergarten is 45 minutes, so it's not very much. But specifically for poetry, it's 5 minutes a day, and you're working on memorization of the poems with your child, and then eventually you want them to practice in front of an audience, whether that's just your own family, friends or neighbors who are willing to do it. And one of the skills it's working on is stage presence, and so they're learning that it's not as big of a deal when they're older. And you're also working on memorization, of course, and that's because this is the grammar or the parrot stage where you're filling their head with all kinds of facts and helping them with memorization. And then one of the recommendations is having them to draw an illustration based on the poem. And then during the kindergarten years, there is no science text recommended, but she recommends going to the zoo, natural history museums, going to the beach and walks around the neighborhoods. Those are all times where you can have discussions about science with your child. And science at this point, she describes as natural history or getting to know the world around you. And I believe it's kind of like that through second grade as well. For reading, it's Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. That's one of the books that she recommends. And thankfully, my mother gave me the copy that she actually used on us to teach us how to read before we entered into kindergarten. So she taught us at the age of 4 how to read. And I guess just based on your child's readiness, you could do it before kindergarten or you could do it in kindergarten, just based on their own needs and readiness. It's recommending just having reading lessons 4 times a week. And there are other good phonetic texts available. Mathematics, she recommends a couple different books, Golden Step Ahead workbooks and An Easy Start in Arithmetic by Ruth Beechick. And then for religion, she recommends the Children's Bible, Golden Press. It's a Catholic children's Bible, and just reading from it twice a week. On alternate days, you can have the child do a retelling of the story and then have an illustration drawn based on the story. And then at the end of the year, the child would have their own Bible that they have illustrated. And the goals are them becoming familiar with the Bible and being able to retell and develop listening skills as well. One of my favorite recommendations by the author in regards to our faith, our religion, is when she says she knew that the first importance must be given to spiritual formation. This would mean that the church would have to be the center of our lives as a family. We would go to daily mass whenever possible, say the family rosary, and talk about the faith and its practical applications on a daily basis. While this is not an academic goal, it has an academic corollary. Our curriculum would always, at all levels, teach the doctrine of the faith clearly. After all, you cannot apply what you do not know. And I really wholeheartedly agree with this. You really, from the beginning, from birth, really, with your children, you have to start forming their faith. And you can't just expect other people to teach it to your children, even if you're sending your kids to Catholic school or faith formation. If they go to public school, they're going to CCD, faith formation. It's really you as the parents who have the primary responsibility of forming the faith of your own children. So that's just a sample curriculum, and of course you can always tweak it to your and your child's needs, but it gets more complex as the grades go on all the way through 12th grade. But again, I just find this book to be a really great resource, and I plan on having my own copy eventually. As a final note, I want to quote Dorothy Sayers again. She quotes her at the end of the book. Is the trivium then a sufficient education for life? Properly taught, I believe that it should be. At the end of the dialectic, the children will probably seem to be far behind their coevals brought up in old-fashioned modern methods so far as detailed knowledge of specific subjects is concerned. But after the age of 14, they should be able to overhaul the others hand over fist. Indeed, I am not at all sure that a pupil thoroughly proficient in the trivium would not be fit to proceed immediately to the university at the age of 16, thus proving himself the equal of his medieval counterpart. I find that to be fascinating because as an outsider to homeschooling, considering homeschooling my own children, I've definitely had a bias based on other people's biases that homeschoolers are always behind. They always test behind. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And even Sayers admits that they may be behind in the early years, but by the age of 14, they're probably going to be ahead or even way ahead of their other peers. And that's just really amazing to me how that all can work out. So I would love to hear what you all think in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell for all notifications so you know when I post. Until next time, bye!